Hello everyone! I've put together a list of 7 interesting facts about ancient Rome just for you. Make yourself a cup of tea, grab a snack, and let's get started. Enjoy! During triumphal processions, when a general returned to Rome after a victory, he was honored almost as a god. Crowds cheered, showered him with praise, and he rode in a chariot dressed in luxurious garments. But standing beside him was a slave whose task was highly unusual. He whispered a reminder to the general, "Remember, you are only human." This ritual shows how much the Romans valued the balance between glory and reality. Even at the height of power, a person was not supposed to forget their mortality. This was not merely a philosophy, but part of a culture where pride was considered dangerous. Interestingly, this practice reflects the Romans' fear of excessive power in a single individual. Even a victor could become a threat to the state. Therefore, the symbolic grounding of the hero was an important element of social control. This custom is often viewed as an early form of psychological discipline that helped keep power in check and prevented it from completely corrupting a person. The Romans were incredibly advanced in engineering, and the Hippocrates heating system is a striking example of this. It was used in baths, villas, and even in some of the homes of wealthy citizens. The system worked by circulating hot air from a furnace beneath the floor and inside the walls. The floors were mounted on special columns, creating a space through which the hot air flowed. As a result, the rooms were heated evenly, creating a level of comfort that even today could be called modern. It is particularly impressive that such a system existed over 2,000 years ago without electricity or modern technology. It required precise calculations and skilled construction. The Hippocrates made Roman baths not just a place for washing, but true centers of relaxation. People could spend hours there enjoying the warmth, socializing, and unwinding. This demonstrates once again that Rome was not only a military power, but also a society where comfort and technology played an important role. Emperor Commodus went down in history as one of Rome's most eccentric rulers. Unlike other emperors, he didn't just watch gladiatorial fights, he entered the arena himself. Of course, his fights were far from fair. He was pitted against weak opponents or animals that were easy to defeat. But to the public, it still looked impressive. Commodus loved to portray himself as a hero, and even compared himself to Hercules. His performances were not only entertainment, but also a way to consolidate his power through spectacle. The people saw him as a strong and fearless leader, even though behind the scenes, everything was carefully staged. However, this obsession with the arena caused discontent among the elite. To them, it was a humiliation of the emperor's status. As a result, his reign became a symbol of the decline of discipline and tradition. Commodus' story shows how power and the desire to be loved by the people can lead to strange and even dangerous decisions. The Romans built one of the most sophisticated water supply systems in the ancient world. Aqueducts carried water for tens of kilometers, and it was then distributed throughout the city via pipes. However, many of these pipes were made of lead. Today, we know that lead is toxic and can cause serious health problems. Some historians suggest that its use may have affected public health, particularly among the wealthy, who were more likely to use the water supply system. Nevertheless, the issue remains controversial. Water often flowed quickly through the pipes, and a layer of minerals formed inside them, which may have reduced contact with the lead. Despite this, the very fact that such a material was used shows that even advanced civilizations may not fully understand the consequences of their technologies. The Roman water supply system remains an engineering marvel, but it also serves as a reminder that progress is not always safe. Wealthy Romans hosted lavish feasts that could last for hours. These were not mere dinners, but full-scale spectacles featuring music, entertainment, and exotic dishes. Rare delicacies would often appear on the tables: seafood, exotic birds, and dishes prepared according to complex recipes. The more unusual the food, the higher the host's status was considered to be. There is a theory that some banquet guests would intentionally empty their stomachs so they could keep eating. Although this is debated by historians, the sheer excess of Roman banquets is beyond doubt. Such events were a way to demonstrate wealth and power. It was a kind of social game where impressing guests was more important than simply eating. The feasts reflect the contrasts within Roman society. On the one hand, discipline and order. On the other, extreme luxury and excess. In ancient Rome, there were so-called sumptuary laws that restricted excessive luxury. The states sought to control how much people could spend on feasts, what clothes they could wear, and even how many guests they could invite. The reason was not only moral, but also political. Excessive wealth and the display of luxury could exacerbate social inequality and stir discontent among the poor. By limiting extravagance, the authorities sought to maintain balance in society. In practice, however, such laws were often circumvented. The wealthy found ways to conceal their spending or display their status more subtly. This creates the impression that the struggle against ostentatious wealth is a problem that remains relevant today. Interestingly, the Romans themselves had mixed feelings about these laws. On the one hand, they supported the idea of moderation. On the other, they aspired to luxury. This conflict between status and restraint was one of the defining features of Roman culture. Octavian Augustus became the first emperor of Rome and one of the most cunning politicians in history. He understood that power was not just about the army, but also about controlling public perception. Augustus actively used art, architecture, and literature to shape the image of the ideal ruler. He was portrayed as the savior of Rome, who restored order after the civil wars. Monuments, statues, and even poets worked to create this image. All of this can be called one of the first systems of state propaganda. It is important to note that Augustus did not appear to be a tyrant. He maintained the appearance of a republic, even though he effectively controlled everything. This made his power more stable. His approach influenced many future states. He demonstrated that managing public opinion can be no less important than the power of arms. So, friends, thank you for watching this video to the end. Subscribe so you don't miss new videos. There's even more to come. Goodbye.